Good day everyone, in front of you is Rose Allen Abusejo Abrahan, and today we're going to talk about designing rubric in physical education and health. And our learning objectives are, at the end of the lesson, you should be able to, first, explain the concept of rubric. Second, differentiate analytic from holistic rubric. And third is designing an appropriate rubric for physical education and health. A pig don't get fatter the more you weight it, according to Johns P. et al. That's true. That is very true. If we don't feed the pig, its weight will steady and possibly it reduce its weight. But if we keep on feeding it daily, then it will gain its weight and become more bigger. Just like learners. If we don't feed them, nurture them with knowledge, then it's like they stop walking on the street. It is now clear that performance assessment is not a walk in the park. It requires time, effort, and sometimes money. Yes, because if you want to make your students learn, sometimes it involves money for the equipments or everything. To ensure fairness and reliability of score, the teacher have to use is scoring rubric. Yes, this is the most important in assessing students' learning or performance, and also their output. What is rubric? Rubric is an assessment tool that clearly indicates achievement criteria across all components of any kind of student's work, from written to oral to visual. It is a coherent set of criteria for pupils' work that includes description of level of performance quality on the criteria. It is a tool that is used not only in PE and health but also in any subject. It is the best tool to use to make sure the teacher has the basis of grading the student's output or performance. This is a very important tool that helps us use na maging fair base sa description na meron ang isang rubric. This help the teacher na hindi manghula kung ano ang dapat na score ng isang bata. Maiiwasan dito yung favoritism, like for example, matalino ang bata, mag-i-score ka agad ng 10. And kung hindi naman mahina yung bata, mag-i-score ka agad ng 4. Or gusto mo lang yung performance kasi gusto mo yung grupo. Kaya agad-agad ka magbibigay ng score. The rubric help the teacher to rate students' output or performance based on the description of the rubric. For example, in dance performance, rubric will show what is the main reason of the performance because it have the categories, like for example, dance performance in the rubric is, it will have the category na depende sa gustong mahit ng teacher. Like for example, choreography, memorization, costume, facial expression, and etc. Now let's move on and designing rubric. Rubric is that they are descriptive and not evaluative. Effective rubric have appropriate criteria and well-written description of performance. Diba na-mention ko kanina? When we say rubric are descriptive rather than evaluative, it means that they focus on explaining the quality of the work rather than just assigning a score or grade. For the descriptive rubric is provide clear criteria for different level of performance. The descriptive rubric is, it explains what makes works excellent, good, or needing improvement. For example, instead of just giving a student a score of 7 out of 10, a rubric might describe what a high-quality response look like strong reasoning, detailed explanation, and well-supported arguments. While sa evaluative, grading simply assign a judgment or scoring without necessarily explaining why. For example, a teacher might give a students an A or C without specific feedback about what worked well or what need to improve. Now let's move on to the purpose of the rubric. Like any other evaluative tools, rubric are useful for certain purposes and for others. The main purpose of rubric is to assess performances. For some performances, the teacher observes the pupil in the process of doing something, or the teacher observes the product that is the result of the pupil's work. Mamaya may explain yung process and the product. Rubric defines criteria for quality work, helping learners understand what is required to succeed. It improves the consistent grading by establishing measurable standards, which reducing subjective in evaluation, diba? By that, students can use rubric to self-assessment and improve by seeing specific areas you need to work on. In addition to the purpose of the rubric, it helps the teacher and the other evaluator to give detailed constructive feedback rather than just a score for their output or performance. Now, let's move on to the types of performance. There are two types, process and product. Processes. Example of processes is physical skills. Example of physical skills are running and jumping, dancing, riding a bicycle, swimming, running, and jumping. Second, use of equipment. For example, using dumbbells or strength training, dribbling a basketball, swinging a tennis racket. And the third is oral communication. For example, ng oral communication is exercise, demonstration with explanation, emergency response and first aid training role play, and health and PE debate or panel discussion. Now let's move on to the product. Example of product is constructed object. For example, fitness and exercise equipment DIY project, personalized wellness plan and materials, and educational health models and display. Second is written essay, themes, reports, term papers. Example nito is reflective essay, research report, fitness and wellness plan. And the other academic product that demonstrate understanding of concept. And other examples are playing a music instrument, doing a forward rule, preparing a slide for the microscope, making a speech to the class, reading aloud, conversing in a refined language, working independently, wooden bookshelf set of wheels, and handmade apron. Now let's move on to the attributes of a rubric. According to Huva in Fred 2000 append, that scoring rubric usually contains the following component. First is clear statement of the level of the knowledge that teacher expect the pupil to achieve for him or her to receive a given grade. Next is the dimension of the quality of the work the teacher expect the pupil to achieve. Commemorates describing the teacher's expectation of knowledge and the quality that distinguish each grade band. Example A, B, C, D, A, F. The attributes of a rubric refers to its essential components that ensure the clear, fair, and effective evaluation of performance or work. There are key attributes of the rubric criteria. The criteria have the specific aspect being assessed. Example, clarity of a work, organization, effort, and PE activity, for example. Next is the performance level. The different level of achievement, for example, excellence, good, fair, need to improve. Next is descriptors or description, a detailed explanation for each performance level provided with clear expectation. Second is the scoring system, a numerical or qualitative scale used for grading, for example, 1 to 5 percentage or letter grades. Next is the objectivity. This ensures fairness by clearing defining expectation and reducing subjective in scoring. Next is the clarity, easy to understand by both students and evaluators to guide improvement and feedback. Are the following questions are important in developing an instructional rubric? First question, what are the essential elements of high quality work? Second, how many level of achievement are to be described? And the third question is, are the criteria for each level clearly described? Now let's move on to the types of scoring rubric. Now, let's talk about analytic rubric. Analytic rubric is a kind of scoring rubric that requires the teacher identify major skills that are relevant and align with what is intended to be measured. It determines the specific and detailed criteria that a pupils must achieve. Each criterion is defined and accompanied by set of description that outlines different level of performance.
Scoring system. Criteria. Description. Performance level.
The second type of rubric is holistic rubric, assessment tool that evaluates a student's work as a whole. The criteria of this rubric are typically broad and general, encompassing all the essential elements of the task or assignment. This kind of rubric allows the teacher to evaluate the performance or a product based on the perspective of its overall quality. It allows the teacher to rate very quickly, thus saving more time for the performance.
Description. Scoring system.
Here is a summary of key consideration for designing rubric in physical education and health. First, clear learning objectives. Objectives should outline the knowledge, skills, and behavior that students are expected to demonstrate. Dapat alam natin kung ano yung dapat ma-achieve sa ating rubric. So next is identifying key criteria. Criteria should reflect the essential components of the subject. Dapat connected siya sa subject kung ano yung ating dapat i-achieve. Define level of performance. Descriptor should specify what constitute each level or achievement. Dapat yung description is nakadescribe kung ano yung mga dapat i-achieve ng students. Include specific feedback. So, feedback should be constructive and actionable. Next is consider developmental appropriateness. Tailor the rubric to the developmental stage of the students. Dapat maiintindihan ng mga bata yung description na meron sa rubric. Next is incorporate variety of assessment method. Designing rubric that accommodate a variety of assessment methods such as performance-based, assessment-based, written assessment, per evaluation, and self-assessment. Dapat meron talagang rubric sa bawat performance or product ng estudyante. Seventh is promote holistic assessment. Include criteria that assess social skills, teamwork, and health behavior. Eighth is aligned with standard. Ensure that the rubric aligns with relevant standard and guidelines for physical education and health education. So, dapat align yung rubric natin sa ating curriculum and to make sure na relevant. And lastly, rubric provides valuable feedback to students, support their learning and growth, and help teachers evaluate students' progress in this critical subject area.